She only wanted to sell a candy to buy her daughter's medicine. He offered an entire house. "You're going to live with me," said the millionaire, changing everything with one unexpected sentence. Between judgment and doubt, a relationship was born that no one believed would last. But in that controversial story, two broken lives found shelter in each other. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching from. Continuing. The rain fell relentlessly over the East End of London when Isabella checked Lucy's temperature for the third time. The fever wouldn't break, and the thermometer insisted on showing 39 degrees Celsius. The 5-year-old girl, always so talkative and lively, now could barely open her eyes. "Mommy, it hurts," the little one murmured, her weak voice making Isabella's heart ache. "I know, my love. It will pass soon," she replied, as she wiped her daughter's forehead with a damp cloth. Isabella looked at the only medicine left in the drawer of the small kitchen cabinet. The fever reducer was almost gone and wouldn't last much longer. She needed to buy more, but her bank account showed only £17.32. It wasn't enough for the medication, much less for a doctor's appointment. She looked at the clock, almost midnight. Raindrops tapped against the window of the small rented flat, as if marking the time for the decision she had to make. There was no one else to turn to. Her parents lived in the Yorkshire Dales and barely managed to support themselves. Her friends had already lent her money so many times that Isabella was ashamed to ask again. On the kitchen counter, the ingredients for the brigadeiros she had made for a client's birthday party were still organized. Sugars, cocoa powder, butter, and condensed milk. Without a second thought, Isabella began to prepare a new batch of sweets. Her hands worked quickly as her mind swirled with worries. She had been laid off from the diner 3 weeks ago when the establishment closed without warning. Since then, she had been living off sporadic cleaning jobs and selling sweets by order. It wasn't enough. "Mrs. Eleanor," Isabella called, tapping lightly on the neighbor's door. The 70-year-old lady appeared, still dressed with her glasses perched on the tip of her nose. "Sorry to bother you so late, but Lucy has a high fever and I need to go out to buy medicine. Could you stay with her for just a few hours?" "Of course, my dear," Mrs. Eleanor replied with the kindness of someone who had lived long enough to understand that life spares no one. "Go in peace. I'll take care of the little one." Isabella handed her old phone to the elderly woman. "If anything happens, the password is Lucy's date of birth. The number for the 24-hour pharmacy is saved in the contacts." She wrapped the brigadeiros in plain aluminum foil, placed them on a makeshift tray, and covered everything with cling film to protect them from the rain. She put on the only raincoat she owned, thin and already worn by time. "You're going to sell sweets at this hour?" "In this rain?" Mrs. Eleanor asked, concerned. "Only until I get the money for the medicine," Isabella replied, trying to hide her own fear. "I'm going to Kensington. There's movement there until late because of the bars and restaurants." The night bus was almost empty. Isabella sat in the back row, protecting the tray of brigadeiros as if it were a treasure. She knew what she was doing was crazy, crossing the city in the middle of the night in the rain to sell sweets in one of London's wealthiest neighborhoods. But when you're a single mother and have no one to count on, madness is sometimes the only possible path. She got off the bus and felt the impact of the rain even harder. The tree-lined streets of Kensington seemed like another world compared to her neighborhood. Huge houses hidden behind high walls, imported cars in garages, security on every corner. At the first house she knocked on, the doorman dismissed her without even calling the residents. At the second, a woman opened the window and asked her to leave, threatening to call the police. At the third, a young couple bought 2 brigadeiros, more out of pity than desire. After 2 hours in the rain, Isabella had sold only 5 brigadeiros. Her feet ached inside her soaked trainers, and despair began to take over. The tray, once full, now showed the result of her failure. That's when she spotted a mansion at the end of the street. Unlike the others, it had no dazzling security lights or ostentatious electronic gates. There was something more discreet, almost melancholic about the property. She rang the doorbell without much hope. After a few seconds, a light came on inside the house. Firm footsteps approached, and the gate was unlocked manually. A tall man, approximately 40 years old, with graying hair at the temples and a serious gaze, appeared. He wore a navy blue robe over his pajamas and held a half-full glass of wine. "Good evening," Isabella said, trying to maintain her dignity despite her deplorable appearance, drenched from head to toe. "Sorry to bother you so late. Can I sell you a sweet?" The man observed the fragile, determined woman, her clothes clinging to her body from the rain, holding a nearly empty tray of brigadeiros. There was something in her eyes, a mixture of despair and strength, that made him hesitate before answering. "How many sweets do you have left?" he asked with a deep voice that showed no irritation, only curiosity. "8 brigadeiros, Isabella replied, showing the tray. "I'll buy them all," the man decided, opening the gate wider. "Come in for a bit to dry off while I get the money." "There's no point in staying in the rain." Isabella hesitated. Entering a stranger's house in the middle of the night didn't seem safe. But there was something in the man's gaze that showed no danger, perhaps just the same loneliness she felt. "My name is Raphael," he introduced himself, as if noticing her hesitation. "You can stay on the porch if you prefer. I just don't want you to catch pneumonia out there." "Isabella," she replied, taking a step inside the property. The mansion's porch was larger than her entire flat. Raphael disappeared for a few minutes and returned with a clean towel and a £100 note. "This is too much," Isabella protested. "The brigadeiros cost £5 each." "Consider the rest a home delivery fee in the rain after midnight," he replied, with a slight smile that softened his serious face. "What are you doing selling sweets at this hour anyway?" Isabella felt her legs weaken, not from fear but from relief. That money meant medicine for Lucy, perhaps even a doctor's appointment. "My daughter is sick." "I needed the money to buy medicine," she answered simply, without elaborating on the sad story she carried. Raphael observed the woman for a few seconds, as if assessing something beyond the spoken words. "You're going to live with me," he said suddenly. Isabella's eyes widened, not understanding. "What do you mean?" "You're going to live with me," Raphael repeated, facing Isabella's astonished expression. I don't understand," she stammered, taking a step back. The proposal sounded like an insult disguised as charity. Raphael immediately realized the misunderstanding. "It's not what you're thinking," he clarified, running a hand through his still damp hair. "I'm offering you a job. I need someone to take care of the house. The salary is good and you can bring your daughter." Isabella gripped the towel tightly. The rain had lessened, but the cold wind still cut through the night. "Why would you offer a job to a stranger who appeared selling sweets at your door in the middle of the night?" "Perhaps for the same reason a mother would go out in the middle of the night in a storm to sell brigadeiros in an unknown neighborhood," he replied, with a tone that was not pity but recognition. Desperation and necessity. The sincerity of that answer disarmed Isabella. Still, distrust had been her defense mechanism for a long time. "I need to go back. My daughter is being looked after by a neighbor." "Of course," Raphael agreed without insisting, "but think about the offer. It would be an independent room in the back area, with its own entrance. 3 meals a day, a fixed salary, a formal employment contract. Your daughter can continue at her school. I'll pay for transport." The man wrote down his address and phone number on a piece of paper. "Call tomorrow if you accept, or come personally," he added, handing her the paper along with another £100 note. "For your daughter's doctor." Isabella wanted to refuse, but she thought of Lucy. "I'll pay you back. Consider it an advance. If you accept the job, we'll deduct it from your first salary," he replied. Practical. With the money secure in her bag and confused thoughts in her mind, Isabella took a taxi back to her neighborhood, a luxury she never allowed herself, but which seemed necessary that night. During the ride, Raphael's words echoed in her head. Was it an absurd proposal or a unique opportunity? Mrs. Eleanor was waiting for her, sitting on the edge of the bed, watching over Lucy's restless sleep. "The fever went down a bit with the compress," the elderly woman informed her. "How did it go?" "Strangely well," Isabella replied, showing the money. "I'm going to the pharmacy right now." Half an hour later, with the medication already administered, Isabella sat beside Mrs. Eleanor in the small kitchen. Chamomile tea steamed in chipped cups as she recounted the unusual encounter. "Be careful, my dear," the elderly woman advised, adjusting her glasses. "The world is full of people with bad intentions." "But it's also full of desperate people like me," Isabella retorted. "I can't go on like this. The last cleaning job I did was 5 days ago. The rent is due next week. What if Lucy needs another medicine, an exam? The night wore on with that conversation, weighing pros and cons. When the first rays of sun appeared on the horizon, Isabella had made her decision. She left Lucy with Mrs. Eleanor again and headed to the address written on the paper. The mansion, in daylight, revealed details that the darkness had hidden. A well-kept garden, but not overly exuberant. A large house, but not ostentatious. Raphael answered the door, dressed in smart trousers and a button-down shirt. He seemed ready to leave. "I've decided to accept," Isabella announced without preamble. "But I have conditions." A discreet smile appeared on his face. "Come in. Let's talk in the living room." The living room was spacious, with elegant but comfortable furniture. Silver-framed photographs decorated some tables. Isabella noticed one image in particular, a younger Raphael, next to a woman of serene beauty. "My conditions are simple," she began, sitting on the edge of the sofa. "My daughter will continue at her local community nursery. I want Sundays off to visit my family when possible. And I don't work after 8 at night, as that's Lucy's time." Raphael nodded. "Fair enough. Now for mine, punctuality, discretion, and organization. I don't receive many visitors, but when I do, I expect the house to be impeccable. The contract will initially be for 3 months, renewable if both parties are satisfied." "When do we start?" Isabella asked, already calculating how long it would take to fetch her things. "Immediately, if possible," Raphael replied. "I can arrange transport for your bags later today." Isabella felt a wave of relief mixed with apprehension. Everything was happening too fast. "I need to pick up my daughter and pack our things. Can we come tonight?" "Perfect," he agreed, standing up. "Martha, my current housekeeper, will show you the room and explain the house routine." As if invoked by the words, a woman of approximately 60 years old appeared at the living room door. She had a serious expression and evaluated Isabella with suspicious eyes. "Martha, this is Isabella, who will start working with us today," Raphael introduced. "Please show her the back room and explain the basic tasks." Martha nodded curtly. "Follow me," she ordered, not hiding her displeasure. The room at the back of the house was in fact a small flat. A living room, bedroom, bathroom, and a kitchenette, all simple, but infinitely better than the cubicle where Isabella lived with Lucy. "Mr. Raphael is very generous," Martha commented, with a tone that suggested something beyond the words. "Perhaps too generous with certain people who appear out of nowhere." Isabella felt the venom in those words, but maintained her composure. "I'm just here to work, honestly." "That's what they all say," the housekeeper retorted. "This place was my home for 17 years. I've seen many people try to take advantage of the master's kindness, especially after Mrs. Eliza left us." The mention of that name reminded Isabella of the photo in the living room. "His wife?" "She was," Martha replied with a heavy sigh. "An illness took her 3 years ago. Since then, Mr. Raphael has lived like a shadow of himself." That information explained a lot: the loneliness of the house, the distant gaze, the melancholy that seemed to inhabit every room. Isabella felt a pang of compassion for the man who, despite his wealth, carried a void as deep as hers, albeit for different reasons. "My daughter gets home from nursery at 5, Isabella informed her, changing the subject. "We'll be here before dinner." "I'll arrange a room for the girl next to yours," Martha said with evident coldness. "Mr. Raphael likes to dine at 7. Be punctual." When Isabella left the mansion, she felt as if she were between two worlds: the daily survival she knew so well, and the stability that had always been denied to her. She took the bus back to her neighborhood with a strange feeling in her chest, fear and hope intertwined, as if life was offering her a chance that could be both a blessing and a trap. Upon arriving at her flat, Lucy was already awake, her fever finally under control. "Mommy, where did you go?" the little one asked, her eyes still sleepy. "I went to get a better house for us both," Isabella replied, stroking her daughter's hair. "How about we have a room just for you, with space for your toys and even a little table for drawing?" Lucy's eyes sparkled at the possibility. "Are we going to have a big house?" "It's not exactly ours, my love," Isabella explained, choosing her words. "Mommy is going to work there, taking care of the house of a very nice man named Raphael. He has a room for us." "Is he going to be my new daddy?" Lucy asked with the innocence of someone who had never known a real father. The question caught Isabella by surprise. "No, darling. He's just Mommy's boss. but he's a good person who will help us for a while." As she packed a few bags with her belongings, Isabella tried to organize not only her clothes and objects, but also the confused feelings that this sudden change brought. She gave notice to her landlord, said goodbye to Mrs. Eleanor with the promise of frequent visits, and embarked with Lucy in the taxi Raphael had sent. As they passed through the mansion gates, Isabella took a deep breath. It wasn't just a new house or a new job. It was a new chapter opening in her life. What she didn't know was how many painful and surprising pages would still be written in that story. The first few weeks at the mansion passed in silent adaptation. Isabella woke before dawn, prepared breakfast and left everything organized before taking Lucy to nursery. Raphael was rarely present at this time. He usually left early for his construction company. Martha remained in the house during the first week to guide Isabella, but her teachings were always accompanied by acidic comments and disapproving glances. "Mr. Raphael likes the sheets ironed twice," she would say, "or the silver cutlery needs to be polished with a special product, not just anything you're used to using." At the end of that week, Martha said goodbye with a veiled warning. "I'll be watching, even from afar. Mr. Raphael is too good a man to notice when people are taking advantage of him." With the housekeeper's departure, the house seemed to breathe more freely. Isabella established her own routine, maintaining high standards of organization, but adding her personal touch to the decor and the dishes she prepared. Raphael noticed the difference. "Dinner is especially tasty tonight," he commented, on a rare evening when he arrived home early. "I don't remember the last time I had such good feijoada." "My grandmother's recipe," Isabella replied with a discreet smile. "I thought you might like something different from the usual menu." That was the first of many conversations during dinner. Gradually, Raphael began to come home earlier. Meals, once served and consumed almost mechanically, became moments of exchange. They talked about trivialities, the weather, news of the day, small childhood stories. Lucy, naturally outgoing, carved out her own space in that dynamic. "Can I show my drawing to Uncle Raphael?" she asked her mother one night, proudly displaying a colorful paper. Uncle Raphael, who until then had maintained a respectful distance from the girl, accepted the drawing with a seriousness that made Lucy puff out her chest with importance. "An artist in the making," he praised, analyzing the colorful scribbles that, according to the little one's enthusiastic explanation, represented a unicorn flying over a castle. That simple gesture seemed to break an invisible barrier. The next night, Raphael brought a set of professional colored pencils for Lucy. "Artists need proper tools," he justified, facing Isabella's surprised gaze. Days began to blend into a routine that, while still marked by formalities, brought comfort to everyone. The house, once silent as a mausoleum, now had life. Children's laughter in the garden, soft music in the kitchen, conversations that extended beyond the necessary. On a sunny Sunday, as Isabella prepared a simple picnic to take Lucy to the park, Raphael appeared in the kitchen, dressed in casual clothes, something rare to see. "Would you mind if I joined you?" he asked, with a hesitation that didn't match his usual confident demeanor. "It's been a long time since I've been to a park." Isabella hid her surprise. "Of course not. Lucy will be happy with the company," and she was. At the park, the girl insisted that Raphael push her on the swing, show her how to climb the slide, try the carousel. For a man accustomed to executive meetings and business decisions, there was something strangely liberating about those simple activities. "You have a special daughter?" he commented, as they watched Lucy play with other children. "She is my strength," Isabella replied, her eyes fixed on her daughter. "When everything fell apart, it was for her that I stayed on my feet." Raphael hesitated before asking, "And her father?" "A closed chapter," Isabella replied firmly. "Brandon found out about the pregnancy and disappeared the same day. I never heard from him again." The silence that followed was not uncomfortable, but full of mutual understanding. Both carried absences, albeit of different natures. It was that same week that Isabella found the door to the room that always remained closed ajar. She was changing the towels in the hallway when she noticed the gap. Curiosity overcame discretion, and she peeked inside. It was a child's room, never used, judging by its immaculate appearance. A crib assembled, shelves with toys still in their packaging, a Star Mobile hanging from the ceiling. Everything in shades of blue and green, as if waiting for a baby who never arrived. "It was supposed to be our son's room," Raphael's voice said behind her, making her jump. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have—" Isabella began, mortified at being caught snooping. "It's all right," he interrupted with a calm that seemed rehearsed. "Eliza was 6 months pregnant when we discovered the tumor. The doctors suggested terminating the pregnancy to start treatment immediately, but she refused. She wanted to give our son every chance." Isabella felt a lump in her throat. She understood at that moment the depth of pain that inhabited that house. "Neither of them survived," Raphael continued, his gaze lost in the empty crib. "I left the room as it was. I couldn't bring myself to dismantle or donate anything. It's as if, as long as this room exists, a part of them is still here." Without thinking, Isabella touched Raphael's arm, a simple gesture of human solidarity. To her surprise, he covered her hand with his, in a silent thank you. From that day on, something changed in their dynamic. It wasn't romance, not yet, but a complicity born of mutual recognition of pain and resilience. Conversations became more personal, silences more comfortable, gestures more natural. One Saturday morning, as Isabella prepared lunch and Lucy drew at the kitchen table, Raphael appeared with an unexpected proposal. "Would you two like to spend the day at the beach? I have a house in Brighton." Lucy's eyes sparkled with excitement. "Beach, Mommy. Can we see the sea?" Isabella hesitated. The line between boss and employee was becoming increasingly blurred, and that frightened her. "I don't know if it would be appropriate." "It's just an invitation," Raphael replied, noticing her discomfort. "From one friend to another. No obligations or expectations." That word, "a friend," hung in the air like an offer of something new and unknown. Isabella accepted, more for Lucy's enthusiasm than for any other reason. The day at the beach was like a parenthesis in reality. Lucy ran on the sand, laughing out loud every time a wave wet her feet. Raphael, wearing shorts and a t-shirt instead of his usual formal attire, looked years younger. Isabella allowed herself to relax, letting the sun warm not only her body, but also the cold spaces within her heart. "Thank you for this," she said, as they watched Lucy build a sandcastle. "I don't remember the last time I saw my daughter so happy." "I should thank you," Raphael replied, with a sincerity that was almost painful. "You two brought life back to a house that was dead." On the way back, Lucy fell asleep in the back seat of the car, exhausted after a day of play. The silence between the adults was comfortable, filled only by the soft sound of the radio playing an old English song. "Martha called earlier today," Raphael commented, breaking the silence. "She said she'll stop by the house tomorrow to pick up some things she left." Isabella felt a slight discomfort. The former housekeeper had never hidden her disapproval of Isabella and Lucy's presence in the house. "I'll be ready to receive her." "Don't worry about Martha," Raphael reassured her. "She served this house for many years and has difficulty accepting change. But the decision about who works with me is exclusively mine." When they arrived at the mansion, it was already night. Raphael carried the sleeping Lucy to her room, with a naturalness that surprised Isabella. Seeing him carefully place her daughter in bed, remove her beach sandals, and cover her with the sheet made her heart race in a way she couldn't explain. "Good night." "Isabella," he said goodbye at her bedroom door. "Thank you for today." "Good night, Raphael," she replied, using his first name without Mr. for the first time. That night, lying in bed with her thoughts in a whirl, Isabella realized that something had changed irreversibly. What began as a simple working relationship was turning into something deeper and more complex. There was danger in this transformation, the danger of trusting, of opening up, of allowing herself to dream again. She fell asleep with the sound of ocean waves still echoing in her ears, and the memory of Raphael's smile when Lucy pulled him by the hand to show him a shell she had found in the sand. Small moments that, like invisible threads, began to weave a new possibility of family. Martha's visit the day after the beach trip was brief, but left a trail of tension in the air. The former housekeeper observed every detail of the house with critical eyes, making veiled comments about changes in standards and excessive familiarity. "Mr. Raphael was always reserved," she commented, as she gathered some personal belongings from her old room. "I see he now goes out with you two. Interesting how some people achieve such quick closeness." Isabella maintained her composure, responding only when necessary. However, Martha's words planted a seed of doubt. Was she overstepping boundaries, confusing kindness with something more? These thoughts accompanied her in the following days, making her redouble her care with professional boundaries. She started calling Raphael Mr. again and reduced conversations to strictly what was necessary. Raphael noticed the change. "Did something happen?" he asked after 3 days of monosyllabic answers and averted glances. "No, sir. Everything's fine," Isabella replied, focused on setting the table for dinner. "Are we back to sir?" he questioned, with a tone that mixed irony and disappointment. "I thought we were past that stage." Isabella took a deep breath before answering. "I think it's better to keep our professional relationship clear, to avoid confusions." "What confusions?" Raphael insisted. "Martha mentioned that you were always very reserved, that perhaps I'm being too familiar." Raphael let out a dry laugh. "And since when does Martha define how I should behave in my own house? Or with whom I should relate?" The word relate hung in the air between them, laden with unspoken possibilities. Before Isabella could answer, the doorbell rang. When she opened the door, she felt as if the ground disappeared beneath her feet. Brandon was standing on the doorstep, with a rehearsed smile and a bouquet of cheap flowers in his hands. "Bella," he greeted, with that voice that had once made her heart race. "It took me a while, but I found you." The 6 years since she had last seen him had not been kind to Brandon. His face, once attractive, showed the signs of a dissolute life. His eyes, however, retained that charismatic sparkle that had captivated her when she was just 19. "What do you want?" Isabella asked, recovering from the initial shock. "To see my daughter," he replied, with a naturalness that sounded like an offense. "I heard she's turning 6 next month. I want to be there." Isabella felt her blood boil. 6 years of absence and now you just show up. How did you know where to find me?" "I went to our old flat. The landlady told me you were working for a rich man here in Kensington," Brandon explained, looking past her into the luxurious interior of the house. "Looks like you did well for yourself." Before Isabella could reply, Raphael appeared beside her. "Any problem?" he asked with a polite coldness that barely disguised the tension. "Brandon, Lucy's father," Isabella introduced, her voice trembling. "Raphael, my employer." The two men measured each other for a moment. Brandon, at 5 feet 9 inches, seemed diminished by Raphael's imposing presence. "I came to see my daughter," Brandon asserted, puffing out his chest in a pathetic display of authority. "Lucy is at her swimming lesson," Isabella replied. "She won't be back until 6. "Then I'll wait," Brandon decided, taking a step forward as if to enter. Raphael subtly blocked his path. "Perhaps it's better to arrange another day," he suggested, with a politeness that sounded like a warning. "When Isabella and you can talk calmly about this unexpected visit." Brandon hesitated, assessing the situation. His gaze shifted between Isabella and Raphael, trying to decipher the dynamic between them. "Sure, another day then," he finally conceded. "Give me your number, Bella, so we can arrange it." Reluctantly, Isabella wrote her mobile number on a piece of paper. Brandon tucked it into the pocket of his worn jacket and said goodbye with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "See you soon, Princess. Tell Lucy her daddy came to see her." When the door closed, Isabella felt her legs weaken. Raphael gently guided her to the living room sofa. "Are you all right?" "No," she admitted honestly. "I never thought he'd come back." "Does he have legal rights over Lucy?" Raphael asked, with the objectivity of someone already thinking about solutions. "He never registered her as his daughter. He didn't even want to know about the pregnancy when I told him," Isabella replied. "Why now? After so long?" Raphael didn't answer immediately. There was something calculating in his gaze, as if evaluating scenarios and risks. "People like Brandon usually have practical reasons for reappearing," he finally commented. "Money, probably." The observation hit Isabella like a punch. It was true. Brandon had always been driven by immediate interests. If he was back, there was a reason beyond belated paternity. The following days were filled with apprehension. Brandon called several times, insisting on seeing Lucy. Isabella tried to postpone, inventing excuses, but knew she couldn't avoid the meeting indefinitely. "He has the right to know his daughter," she admitted to Raphael during one of their dinners. "But I'm afraid of what Lucy will feel. She's never had a father." What if she gets attached and he disappears again? Oh, you don't have to face this alone, Raphael replied, covering her hand with his. The gesture, simple and comforting, made Isabella's heart race. The meeting between father and daughter was scheduled for a Saturday, in a public park. Isabella arrived with Lucy half an hour early, preparing the girl to meet a longtime friend of Mommy's. Brandon appeared punctually, something unusual for his old habits. He wore new clothes, had cut his hair, and displayed a watch Isabella suspected was fake. "Lucy," he called, kneeling to be at the girl's height. "I'm your dad." The frankness of his approach surprised Isabella. Lucy, in turn, looked at the stranger with curiosity, but without the enthusiasm Brandon clearly expected. "My dad?" she repeated, confused. "But I don't have a dad." The innocent comment hit Brandon like an arrow. His smile faltered for an instant. "Now you do," he recovered, "and I've come to be close to you." The meeting lasted an hour, enough time for Lucy to show some receptiveness, but maintain the natural distance of someone interacting with a stranger. Brandon tried to win her over with promises of gifts and outings, while Isabella watched with growing suspicion. When Lucy moved away to play on the climbing frame, Brandon approached Isabella with an unexpected proposal. "I want us to be a family again." "A family?" she repeated incredulously. "You disappeared for 6 years, Brandon. 6 years without a call, a message, a penny to help raise your daughter?" "I was lost, Bella," he justified himself. "But I've changed. I have a job now, I'm living with a friend, but I can rent a place for the 3 of us." Something about the sudden insistence sounded false. Brandon had never been the type of man who valued family or responsibilities. "Why now?" "Because I realized what I lost," he replied with a look that tried to convey sincerity. "And also because I know Lucy needs a father, not a boss who's taking advantage of the situation." The malicious comment caught Isabella by surprise. "What are you talking about?" "People talk, Bella," Brandon continued with an expression of false concern. "A young, beautiful woman living in a rich widower's house. What do you think people are thinking?" Isabella felt her face burn with anger and shame. "I don't care what people think. I'm working, honestly." "And sleeping in the back room?" Brandon provoked. "Are you sure that's all he wants from you?" The slap was instinctive, quick and hard enough to leave a red mark on Brandon's face. "Never insinuate something like that again," Isabella warned with controlled fury. "You don't have that right." The meeting ended there. Isabella called Lucy and they returned home in silence. The girl, sensitive to her mother's emotions, asked no questions about the friend she had just met. When they arrived at the mansion, Raphael was waiting for them on the porch, pretending to read a book. His worried gaze revealed that he was more anxious about the outcome of the meeting than he wanted to admit. "How was it?" he asked, as Lucy ran to show the small shell Brandon had given her as a gift. "Exactly as I imagined," Isabella replied bitterly. "He wants to come back, form a family, and he made a point of insinuating that my job here is something else." Raphael closed the book forcefully. There was a controlled anger in his gestures. "And what did you say?" "I slapped him," Isabella admitted, surprising herself with her own audacity. Maybe it wasn't the most mature thing to do, but it was the most sincere. To her surprise, Raphael smiled, a genuine smile that lit up his usually serious face. I would have liked to have seen that. That night, after putting Lucy to bed, Isabella found Raphael on the porch, contemplating the stars with a glass of wine in his hands. Without saying anything, he offered her another glass. "Thank you," Isabella said, sitting in the chair beside him. "For everything." "I haven't done anything yet," he replied with an enigmatic smile. "Yes, you have. You welcomed us. You gave Lucy security. You respected our space." The silence that followed was comfortable, full of unspoken possibilities. Raphael turned to face her with renewed seriousness. "Brandon will be back. Men like him always come back when they realize there's something to lose." "I know," Isabella sighed. "And I don't know how to protect Lucy from all this." Raphael's hand found hers in the dark. "So you're not alone," he promised. "I won't let him hurt either of you." At that moment under the starry sky, Isabella allowed herself to believe that perhaps, just perhaps, fate was finally on her side. What she didn't imagine was that, in the shadows of the night, gears were already in motion to test the limits of this new and fragile happiness. The following weeks brought a new routine. Brandon called almost daily, insisting on seeing Lucy. Isabella allowed a few supervised meetings, always in public places, always with her constant presence. The girl, initially shy, began to show cautious curiosity towards the man who introduced himself as her father. "He told me he's going to take me to Disneyland one day," Lucy commented. As Isabella combed her hair for school. "Is that true, Mommy?" "People sometimes make promises they can't keep, my love," Isabella replied, choosing her words carefully. "It's better to be happy with what we have now." Brandon's presence began to cast a shadow over the peace they had built. Raphael, though never openly expressing it, showed signs of discomfort whenever his name was mentioned. Seemingly casual questions, "How was the meeting?" "How did he say when he's leaving?" revealed a deeper concern. On a rainy Sunday, as Raphael helped Lucy with a math assignment, Isabella received an unexpected message from Brandon. "We need to talk. Just the two of us. It's important." Against her better judgment, Isabella agreed to meet him at a coffee shop in the city center. She left Lucy in Raphael's care, who promptly organized an afternoon of popcorn and cartoons. Brandon was already waiting for her, with an uncharacteristically serious expression. "Thanks for coming," he said as Isabella sat across from him. "I want to be direct. I'm thinking of filing for shared custody." The declaration hit Isabella like a physical blow. Shared custody? After 6 years of complete abandonment? "I have rights," Brandon insisted. "I'm the biological father, and I can prove I'm stable now. I have a job, a place to live." "A 2-month job and a rented room at a friend's house don't make you a father," Isabella retorted, controlling her voice to avoid attracting the attention of other customers. "And you never registered Lucy. Legally, you don't exist in her life." Brandon smiled with a confidence that unnerved her. "I've already spoken to a lawyer. I can do a DNA test, acknowledge paternity, and file the petition. The judge usually favors family reconciliation." Isabella felt a chill down her spine. She knew enough about the system to know he wasn't bluffing. "Why now, Brandon? 6 years without caring, and suddenly you want to be a full-time father?" "People change," he replied, with a rehearsed sincerity that didn't convince. "And maybe I realize what I lost when I saw where you're living now. This millionaire, are you two an item?" The question came loaded with insinuations. "That's none of your business," Isabella replied dryly. "It is my business when it involves my daughter," he retorted, with a more aggressive tone. "I don't want Lucy being raised in this ambiguous environment with a man who is nothing to her." "Ambiguous?" Isabella repeated, indignant. "Raphael has been more of a father to Lucy in a few months than you have in her entire life." The mention of the name provoked a visible reaction in Brandon. His eyes hardened and a bitter smile formed on his lips. "So it's Raphael now? Not Mr. or employer?" Isabella realized her mistake too late. "Don't twist things. He's a good man who gave us an opportunity when we needed it." "An opportunity with conditions, I imagine," Brandon provoked. "I'm not naive, Bella. I know how the world works. A rich, lonely man offers a house and a job to a beautiful, desperate woman." "Enough," Isabella interrupted, standing up. "I'm not going to sit here listening to sordid insinuations." Brandon grabbed her wrist, forcing her to sit down again. "I'm not finished yet. I have a proposal. I'm not interested." "You should listen before you refuse," he insisted, lowering his voice. "I can drop the idea of shared custody, disappear from both your lives forever. But it comes at a price." The true motive finally revealed itself. "How much?" Isabella asked with contempt in her voice. 200,000. A fair amount to compensate for years of paternal absence, don't you think? The audacity of the proposal left Isabella momentarily speechless. "You're despicable," she finally managed to say. "I'm practical," Brandon corrected. "I know you don't have that kind of money." "But your employer does. And I'm sure he'd pay to keep the peace in this alternative family arrangement you've created." Isabella stood up, this time determined. "Never come near us again. If you try anything against Lucy, I'll fight with everything I have." "Think about what's best for the girl," Brandon insisted, still seated. "A custody battle can be traumatic. Public exposure, hearings, psychologists evaluating every aspect of her life. And I'm sure your boss won't like the attention that will bring to him and his hiring methods." Isabella left the coffee shop with trembling legs, filled with anger and fear. She knew Brandon wasn't bluffing. He had always been manipulative and opportunistic. If he decided to carry out his threat, Lucy's life would be turned upside down. During the journey back to the mansion, she tried to organize her thoughts. Should she tell Raphael, ask for help, or try to resolve it herself, as she always had? The decision was made for her when, upon arriving home, she found Raphael and Lucy asleep on the sofa, amidst cushions and improvised blankets for a fort. The television still showed the credits of a children's movie, and popcorn remnants were scattered on the coffee table. The scene, so domestic, so precious, brought tears to Isabella's eyes. She couldn't risk losing this. She couldn't allow Brandon to destroy the peace they had found. Careful not to wake them, she went to her room. She needed time to think, to devise a plan. Perhaps she should seek a lawyer, inquire about her rights. Her phone ringing interrupted her thoughts. It was a message from Brandon. Thought about my proposal. I have a deadline, 3 days. After that, I'm going to court. The following nights were sleepless. Isabella alternated between moments of fierce determination and periods of absolute despair. She avoided Raphael, fearing he would notice her distress and ask questions she wasn't ready to answer. But Raphael noticed. On the third night, he gently knocked on her bedroom door. "May I come in?" he asked with that deep voice that always brought a sense of security. Isabella opened the door, trying to hide her exhaustion and worry. "Did something happen?" "That's what I should be asking," he replied gently. "You've been distant. You barely eat, you avoid talking. Is it because of Brandon?" The mention of the name was enough to break her carefully constructed facade. Tears held back for days finally escaped. Raphael, without hesitation, enveloped her in a protective embrace. Between choked sobs, Isabella told him everything: the threat of shared custody, the extortion attempt, the fear of losing Lucy, the apprehension of involving Raphael in something so sordid. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" he asked when she finished. "I didn't want to involve you in my problems," Isabella replied, wiping away her tears. "You've already done so much for us." Raphael held her face in his hands, with a tenderness that made her heart race. "You two are not a problem for me, Isabella. You're my family now." The word family hung between them, laden with meanings and possibilities. There was an implicit declaration in that moment, a feeling that had grown silently in recent months, but which neither of them had dared to name. "We'll sort this out together," Raphael promised with quiet determination. "I know good lawyers. Brandon has no legal chance of getting custody, not with his history of abandonment. But he can cause a lot of damage in the process," Isabella argued. "Exposure, gossip, insinuations about us." "Let them talk," Raphael replied firmly. "We know the truth." That night marked a definitive change. For the first time, Isabella allowed herself to believe that she didn't have to fight alone, that there was someone willing to face the battles by her side, not out of obligation or pity, but by choice. The days that followed were filled with intense planning. Raphael discreetly consulted a lawyer specializing in family law. Isabella gathered all the evidence she had of Brandon's abandonment: old messages, witnesses to his disappearance, the birth certificate without the paternal name. Brandon, sensing the resistance, intensified his threats. His messages became more aggressive, his insinuations more explicit. In one of them, he mentioned that he would love to see the gossip newspapers publishing about businessman Raphael Thompson's new family arrangement. It was at this point that Raphael made a decision without consulting Isabella. Using his contacts and resources, he arranged a private meeting with Brandon at his construction company office. What happened at that meeting, Isabella would only discover days later, when Brandon suddenly stopped calling and sending messages. Concerned by the sudden silence, she confronted Raphael during dinner after Lucy had gone to sleep. "What did you do?" she asked directly, placing her napkin on the table. "Brandon suddenly disappeared." Raphael hesitated before answering. "I solved the problem." "How?" "In the only way men like Brandon understand," he replied, avoiding her gaze. "I gave him what he wanted." Understanding hit Isabella like a lightning bolt. "You paid him?" "You paid him to disappear." Raphael's silence was answer enough. "How could you do that without consulting me?" Isabella asked, her voice trembling with indignation. "It was my daughter, my life." "I wanted to protect you both," Raphael justified himself. "Brandon is the type of man who only understands the language of money. I offered him more than he asked for, on the condition that he formally renounced any rights over Lucy and disappeared forever." Isabella stood up, feeling betrayed in a way she hadn't expected. "It wasn't your place to make that decision." "Isabella, I just wanted to—" "I know what you wanted," she interrupted bitterly. "You wanted to solve everything with money, as you always have. Buy solutions, buy peace, buy people." "That's not fair," Raphael protested, also standing up. "I never tried to buy you. I never demanded anything in return for what I did. Didn't you?" Isabella retorted, tears in her eyes. "Then what was this? Deciding my future, my daughter's future, without consulting me, as if I were incapable of solving my own problems?" "That's not what I thought," Raphael defended himself with growing desperation in his voice. "I just wanted to prevent you from suffering more, for Lucy to be exposed to a long and painful legal process, for you to have to face Brandon again." "I didn't need a savior, Raphael," Isabella said, with a calm that contrasted with the inner storm. "I needed a partner, someone who would respect my autonomy, who would trust my ability to make my own decisions." The pain in Raphael's eyes was palpable. "I trust you more than anyone," he affirmed. "It was out of love that I did this, because I love you and Lucy more than I ever thought I could love again." The declaration, so long awaited and yet so unexpected at that moment, did not diminish the feeling of betrayal. "Love without respect is not true love," Isabella replied, her voice choked. "It's possession control." That same night, Isabella packed her bags and Lucy's. She called Mrs. Eleanor, who promptly offered temporary shelter. When Raphael tried to stop her, she was firm. "I need space to think, to decide if what we built can be saved." In Mrs. Eleanor's small flat, lying on an improvised mattress beside her sleeping daughter, Isabella allowed herself to cry freely for the first time in years. Not just for what she had lost, but for the cruel doubt that now tormented her. Had it all been an illusion? The affection, the respect, the feeling of family, could all of it be reduced to a financial transaction, to a rich man accustomed to solving problems with checks and contracts? The tears eventually dried, giving way to a renewed determination. Regardless of what the future held, one thing she knew for sure: she would never again allow anyone, no matter how well-intentioned, to decide her destiny without her active participation. Not Brandon, not Raphael, nor any other man. The days in Mrs. Eleanor's small flat passed slowly. Isabella found a temporary job as a bakery assistant nearby, while looking for a permanent place to live. Lucy constantly asked about Raphael and the big house with a garden where they could play freely. "When are we going back, Mommy?" the girl questioned, with that innocence that didn't comprehend the complexities of adult relationships. "I miss Uncle Raphael and the stories he used to read before bed. For now we'll stay here, my love," Isabella replied, trying to hide her own pain. "But you can draw something beautiful for him. I can deliver it from you." Raphael's calls were frequent at first. Then, respecting her request for space, they became more spaced out. He sent simple messages, never pressuring, just making it clear that he would be there when, and if she wanted to talk. Mrs. Eleanor, with the wisdom of her 70 years, silently observed the young woman's suffering. One night, while having tea on the small balcony of the flat, the elderly woman finally spoke. "Pride is a lonely companion, my dear." "It's not pride," Isabella defended herself. "It's dignity, self-respect." "There's a fine line between the two," the lady retorted, adjusting her glasses on her wrinkled face. "Self-respect keeps us whole. Pride keeps us alone. He acted behind my back, Mrs. Eleanor. He paid Brandon to disappear as if I were incapable of solving my own problems." The elderly woman sighed deeply. Men, especially powerful ones, are raised to believe they must protect, solve, fix. It's not an excuse, but perhaps it's an explanation. The important question is, did he do it out of malice or out of good intention? "The intention doesn't erase the mistake," Isabella insisted. "No, it doesn't," Mrs. Eleanor agreed. "But it determines whether the mistake deserves forgiveness." That conversation planted a seed that would slowly grow in the following days. Isabella began to re-examine the events in a different light. Raphael had made a mistake, yes, but out of love, not control. The realization didn't lessen the gravity of the error, but it opened space for something she resisted admitting: the possibility of forgiveness. 3 weeks after the separation, Isabella received an envelope in the mail. Inside, a formal invitation to a children's art exhibition at Lucy's school. Raphael had funded an art program at the institution, and the children's drawings would be displayed in a renowned gallery. "My drawing is going to be there, Mommy," Lucy exclaimed, jumping with excitement. The teacher chose the unicorn I made for Uncle Raphael. The mention of the drawing brought a wave of emotion. Lucy had made that unicorn days before the separation, but Isabella had never had the opportunity to deliver it. The fact that Raphael had found a way to honor the girl's talent, even from a distance, touched her heart in an unexpected way. The night of the exhibition arrived clear and starry. Isabella dressed Lucy in her best dress and dressed herself with special care, not to impress, she told herself, but out of respect for the occasion. The gallery was elegantly decorated, with the children's drawings framed like true works of art. Teachers, parents and children circulated, admiring the works, while waiters served juice and small canapes. It was Lucy who saw him first. "Uncle Raphael!" the girl shouted, running towards him before Isabella could stop her. Raphael crouched down to receive the enthusiastic hug. He wore a dark suit that contrasted with the luminous smile that spread across his face upon seeing the child. His eyes, however, searched for Isabella over the girl's shoulder. When their gazes finally met, the world seemed to slow down. There was so much to be said, and yet a silence that communicated more than words. "Your drawing is in the place of honor," Raphael told Lucy, pointing to a central wall where the colorful unicorn stood out. "The teacher said you have a lot of talent." Lucy ran to see her drawing, leaving the adults momentarily alone. "Thank you for this," Isabella said, breaking the ice. "It means a lot to her." "To me too," Raphael replied sincerely. "I miss you both." The house is empty without the sound of Lucy's footsteps running down the corridor, without your presence filling the empty spaces. Isabella felt her heart tighten. "We miss you too," she admitted, surprising herself with the confession. "Can we talk after the exhibition?" he asked, with a hesitation that didn't match his usual confidence. Isabella nodded. The time had come to face what they had both been avoiding. The night unfolded in a strange normality. They observed the drawings, talked with other parents, applauded when each child received a certificate of participation. Any casual observer would never guess the emotional storm brewing beneath the calm surface. When the exhibition ended, Mrs. Eleanor, who had also been invited, offered to take Lucy home. "You two need to talk," the elderly woman said with a meaningful look. Without rush and without interruptions. In Raphael's car, the initial silence was almost palpable. It was he who spoke first, as he drove through the illuminated streets of London. "I made a grave mistake," he admitted, without circumlocution. "I should have talked to you, included you in the decision. It was arrogant and presumptuous of me to think I could solve everything alone." The sincerity of the confession disarmed Isabella's defenses. "Why did you do it?" she asked, her voice soft. "Why did you decide to act without telling me?" Raphael took a deep breath before answering. "Fear," he finally confessed. "Fear of losing you both to Brandon. Fear of the scandal he threatened to create. Fear of seeing you suffer through a long and painful legal process. You didn't trust that I could handle it." "I trusted too much that I could protect you both," he corrected. "It's different. I spent so long alone, Isabella. When you and Lucy came into my life, it was as if I finally saw in color again, after years of seeing everything in black and white. The fear of losing that made me act on impulse." Isabella absorbed those words in silence. The pain of betrayal was still there, but now accompanied by an understanding that hadn't existed before. Raphael parked the car at a viewpoint that offered a panoramic view of the city. London's lights glittered below like fallen stars on earth. "I'm not asking you to come back immediately," he said, turning to face her. "I just want a chance to rebuild trust, to prove that I learned from my mistake." "How?" Isabella asked, genuinely curious. "In whatever way you choose," he replied. "At your pace, on your terms, not as employer and employee, but as equal partners." The word partners resonated deeply. It was exactly what Isabella had desired from the beginning, not a savior or protector, but someone who would walk beside her, respecting her autonomy. "I need to know one thing," she said, gathering courage. "What exactly did you say to Brandon? What were the terms?" Raphael didn't hesitate. I offered 300,000 more than he asked for. In return, he signed a document formally renouncing any paternal rights and committing to never seek you out again. I also included a confidentiality clause. He cannot talk about you, about me, or about the agreement. And if he breaks the agreement? He loses everything and still faces legal action, Raphael replied. But I doubt he will. Brandon is driven by immediate interest, not principles. With the money he received, he's probably already far away, living the life he always dreamed of without responsibilities or commitments. The realism of that assessment brought a strange sense of closure. Brandon had never truly been a father to Lucy, just a genetic donor who reappeared out of convenience. His absence, now permanent, was perhaps best for everyone. I made a choice when I left your house, Isabella said after a long silence. I chose to value myself, to respect myself. It wasn't easy to leave behind the comfort, the security, the feelings that were growing. But it was necessary. I know, Raphael replied humbly, and I admire your strength. I always have. If we go back, if we give us a chance, I need to be sure it will be different, that my decisions will be respected, that I will be consulted on everything that affects my life or Lucy's. You have my word, Raphael promised, extending his hand to lightly touch hers. And more than that, you have my heart, completely. That night did not bring definitive resolutions, but it opened a path. In the following weeks, they slowly rebuilt their relationship. First with conversations, then with occasional visits, finally with Isabella's decision to return, not as an employee, but as a companion. Readjustment was not immediate. There were wounds that needed to heal, trust that needed to be rebuilt. But there was also a genuine love, the kind of love that grows through mistakes and reconciliations, becoming stronger and deeper with each challenge overcome. 6 months after the reconciliation, Raphael made a formal marriage proposal. Not with a priceless ring or a grand gesture, but with a simplicity that showed how much he had changed. A picnic in the same park where they had spent that first day together, with Lucy as an enthusiastic accomplice to the proposal. The wedding was an intimate celebration in the mansion's garden, which was now truly everyone's home. Mrs. Eleanor, as an honored guest, couldn't hold back tears when Lucy entered, scattering flower petals along the improvised path to the altar. In the years that followed, the family grew. The room that had once remained closed, a silent monument to unbearable loss, was finally transformed. Not into a baby's room, that memory would always be preserved in a special place in Raphael's heart, but into an art studio for Lucy, whose talent had blossomed under constant encouragement. Isabella returned to her studies, fulfilling her postponed dream of studying pedagogy. With Raphael's support, she opened a small art school for children from underprivileged communities, uniting her passion for teaching with the talent discovered in Lucy. And when, 2 years after the wedding, they welcomed twins, a boy and a girl who brought even more joy and organized chaos to the house, happiness seemed complete. Not perfect, because life never is, but deeply satisfying in its authenticity. On a quiet afternoon, as they watched the children play in the garden, Raphael asked Isabella, "Did you ever imagine that rainy night, with brigadeiros and despair, would bring us here?" Isabella smiled, remembering the drenched young woman who had knocked on that gate years before, with only a few coins in her pocket and a fierce determination in her heart. "No," she admitted, "but I learned that life rarely follows the script we imagine. And it's a good thing it doesn't," Raphael added, intertwining his fingers with hers, "because reality, with all its imperfections and surprises, turned out to be much better than anything I could have planned." In that moment of shared reflection, Isabella understood a fundamental truth. Families are not made only of blood or legal ties. They are built daily through conscious choices. The choice to forgive, to start anew, to love even while knowing each other's imperfections. And as the sun set on the horizon, casting a golden light over the garden where their children played, Isabella silently thanked all the paths she had traveled, even the most painful ones. For every step, every fall, every new beginning had been necessary to lead her exactly where she was meant to be. End of story. Dear listeners, we hope Isabella and Raphael's story has touched your hearts. To continue this emotional journey, we have prepared a special playlist with equally engaging and inspiring stories. Find it by clicking to your left. If this narrative about forgiveness, new beginnings, and true love resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave your like on this video. Every day we bring unique stories that explore the complexity of life and human relationships. We want to know your opinion about this story. Should Isabella have forgiven Raphael? What would you do in her place? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Until the next story.